was there in the 60s, it wasn't that great. It wasn't really
You're
that great.
telling us now?
Yeah, it was okay, you know, but it wasn't that good. There was actually less happening, if you can believe that. You know, it was like the Beatles and the Stones. What else was there, you know, until like 67, and then you had San Francisco. But you had to travel a long way to see a good rock and roll band. First of all, I was imitating, you know, to be honest with you. I was copying what I heard on record and trying to do it that way. And as time went by, when I started to meet my heroes, for instance, when I met Freddie King, when I met Muddy Waters, they didn't want to hear me play like them, right? So they wanted to hear me play like me. And that's when I realized that I had to develop some kind of personality of my own with my music. Being what I am can be lonely sometimes, because I feel like I'm too purist, or I'm part of a dying tradition, you know, like a dinosaur of the blues, really. And there have been times in my past when I thought, well, I've got to pack this in because it's lonely. You know, maybe I should become more of a rock and roll musician so I can hang out with the other guys. But when Robert came along, I thought, oh, there's someone else that likes this stuff and plays it too, so it made me feel more at home.
Do you remember when you got your first guitar?
Yeah.
When was it?
Well, I was about 15. Well, when I bought my first guitar, that is, my grandmother bought me a guitar when I was 13, and I couldn't, I mean, that was just pure whim. I said I wanted a guitar, and she bought me one. And I couldn't play it. I never learned how to play it, so it wasn't until when I was 15 that I bought one very cheap and learned to play.
Do you remember the first feeling of it? I mean, did you sort of immediately hit
Well, it was
off
very
with
foreign. It wasn't looking, you know, it looked so easy for people like Buddy Holly and Elvis Presley, the way they held the guitar, but you actually got one. It just like, it was funny, and the strings hurt, and I had no idea. And it really was purely for love of listening to music that I started to play, just to, you know, a little bit at a time.
Did you like the sound of it, your own sound?
Yeah, because it's one instrument where you can hit one string with a plectrum. Just hit one string and it sounds good, or maybe hit two strings, and you start to invent it, you know, yourself, and you think you're writing and you're learning, and it is enjoyable as you're doing it. Not like I would imagine playing the violin, you know what I mean? That would sound awful when you're learning, but the guitar sounds good when you're learning.
Did you ever consider another instrument?
Yeah, when I was a kid I wanted to play trumpet, violin, drums, all of them.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So how come you chose?
Well, because the music that I was hearing that I really liked was being played on the guitar, you know, and I'd do Buddy Holly. I mean, I guess the only other person that that I really liked was Jerry Lee Lewis, but piano was inconceivable. I mean, you can't just go out and buy a piano, whereas guitar is much more accessible. You know.
Right. What do you think is the best thing about the guitar? I mean, is it the sound of it, or is it the feel of it, or is it what it can do?
I think it's so adaptable. You can carry it around, you can play it in your room, you can amplify it and play it to thousands of people. You can play it with a slide, with a bottleneck, and you can play rhythm, you can play lead, you can use it as accompaniment, you can use it as a voice. It has so many uses, you know. I can't think of any other instrument that is that versatile.
Very few white musicians actually play the kind of blues that you played in the 60s.
There weren't many then. There are a lot more now.
Yeah. Why do you think that was? Did you feel that was it just you picking up from your idols, or was it not done?
I think the problem was with most players, even today, is that we were talking about this earlier on with some other friends of mine, that they look at the people that are immediately influencing them, like the modern guitar players, and they stop there. They think that that's where it started. So people that listen to me, if they're listening to me now or they were listening to me in the 60s or 70s, they think I started it. They don't choose to go beyond what I do and find out what I was interested in. And that mystifies me, because that's what I did. I mean, I heard Buddy Holly and I heard Elvis Presley, and I wanted to know what they were listening to. I wanted to know where it came from. So it became my obsession and my kind of scholarship, in a way, like being at school, to find out where it started. And I would go back, you know, through Muddy Waters and through all the people that came from Mississippi and Chicago, and try and examine it and learn every aspect of it. And I think that's what is fascinating about guitar playing, and the blues and rhythm and blues and rock and roll. There isn't a record made that has any soul that didn't come out of the blues, you know. And even people today, like Prince and Bobby Brown, and they sing the blues. I mean, it's there. If you know a little bit about it, you can hear it. And if it doesn't, I'm not really that moved by it.
What did it feel like when you met them? Was it a letdown, or was it?
It was very scary, but incredibly exciting. Incredibly exciting.
But did you mind playing to them or with?
Well, yeah, because all I could do at first was play like them. Especially like people like Freddie King. I'd copied him all my life. And here he was on stage with me, and what could I do that wasn't like him? You know, that's when it was really hard to come up with something of my own.
Can you hear what kind of musicians have copied you? I mean, can you sort of see, oh, that's me, he likes me, or can you trace it?
No, I can't actually, because I think I can sometimes, and I can hear, for instance, people that are copying George.
At least you've got one friend that sort of followed you through the years. I was thinking about George Harrison, who wrote the song for you. Yeah,
we did 3 or 4 songs, in fact, for the album, and I selected that one because I thought it was more complementary to the rest of the album. The other songs we did were more rock and roll-y and more, in fact, more pop songish, and I thought this one would be more different. You know, it would set the album off perfectly.
The two of you go back a really long way.
A long way, back to the early 60s, yeah. In fact, I was with the Yardbirds when I first met George, and we were on the Beatles Christmas show. And we hit it off, and I love him very much. He's a great guy. Kind of a bit like an older brother, you know?
Yeah?
Yeah.
It must be hard to keep up friendships in this business, though. I mean, you move a lot, you work all over the place. And
well, as time goes by, I mean, it's a bit like when you're at war, you know, you stick together, and it's like the old guys now, we do stick together because of all the competition, you know, and like, I find that I have more in common with people that have survived the 60s and the 70s, you know. We've got the same sort of attitude, you know, and every one of us really, like Elton and the Stones and George and all of the guys, really, that much more mellow now, and we value one another's friendship. You know?
You've gone softer.
Yeah?
Yeah?
Yeah. In some ways, harder in others.
Yeah? Such as?
You would have to ask me that. I guess just more resilient, you know? More resilient. You roll with the punches better when you get a little more experienced. I don't tend to suffer from criticism or from mistakes as much as I used to. I used to be very, very insecure about reading bad reviews, things like that.
Really?
Yeah, they had a very profound effect on me earlier on, and now I'm not so moved by it, you know. I'm more secure in myself, I guess.
When so many people really sort of care a lot about what you did in the past, is that difficult for you? Do you sort of feel that they like your past better than they like your future?
Yeah.
Or your present?
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes tied in with their own lives, you know. Like when they got married, you know, or something like that. They kind of like, they know the song that Cream did the first time they took their first girlfriend out or something, and so it's not it's like their own nostalgia they're suffering from. It has nothing to do with me at all.
What was it that made you so great?
Well, it was that kind of the value that we all placed on one another, and because there was so little of it happening, it was much more important. You know, the centres were New York, San Francisco and London, and there was probably 2 bands in each town that were worth going to see. So, I mean, it was really like, oh God, this is exciting stuff, but it's better now, I think. You've got so much more choice.
Yeah, but I mean, it must have been something that you had, something that you did.
Well, it was, I mean, from my personal point of view, it was a great time in my life because I was in my early 20s, and you know, that part of your life is always exciting because you feel like the world is your oyster, you know. But in a realistic sense, no, it's a myth.
Really?
I'm sorry to tell you.
Well, how do you think it would have done today if you sort of put up Cream today? Would it sort of have disappointed anybody?
It wouldn't stand up. It wouldn't stand up. I mean, there's you know, at least 20 or maybe even 30 heavy metal bands that are far better than what the Cream were in their day. I mean, we had our moments, and there are, you know, some good things on record that we did, but live, a lot of it was just rough, you know. I mean, we had a good time, but today it wouldn't survive. It really wouldn't.
But did you move on from them even before people did it? I mean, did you feel that the same at the time?
No, No, I guess we thought we were the bee's knees at the time, you know. I think we were all egomaniacs. We had to be. We couldn't have made that music unless we were really very headstrong.
But was it nice being in a band that close? I mean, that sort of little nucleus of
it was a little claustrophobic, I think. I don't think I could experience that again because you're living with one another. We were doing like tours that went on for 6 months, playing 7 nights a week, constantly living with one another, and I don't, you know, that's too much. There's no balance in that kind of life. You know, it's just, let's have a break, you know. My life is better now, it's much better pay. I mean, I work hard, but I rest as well, you know, and I have a close relationship with the musicians I play with, but we all go home to different places, and we let one another breathe. We don't stay in one another's pockets. And I don't think you can do that.
No?
No.
But when you look back, if you sort of, what do you consider the high point in your career, if you sort of value it for yourself?
Well, the high points were, I guess John Mayall was, you know, when I was first finding my feet as a blues guitar player, and I was being inspired and encouraged by John, and being fed and nurtured. You know, he really did a great job of making me value myself and bringing me out, you know. And then again, when when we were forming and playing in the early days with Duckert and the Dominoes, playing with my first American band. Yeah, that was really exciting because these guys knew what it was all about. You know, they weren't imitators. They were real musicians from Tulsa, Oklahoma, that knew about everything that I liked, you know. So that was one of the high points. And then later in the 70s, before I got kind of overwhelmed by booze and drugs and everything, when I had the band, the same band, but, you know, doing 461 and Slow Hand and these albums. And then I guess, you know, coming to work with Phil, and then now with Greg Phillingham.
I read that you got an award the other day from Prince Charles for being 25 years in the music business.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was very touching.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was at one of the Prince's trusts. I think it was the last one I did, and it was a surprise. I didn't know it was going to happen. And he does this thing where you line up. All the musicians that are going to play that night line up. He comes down and shakes your hand. And he had this thing, you know, it was like a beautiful solid silver guitar on a little pedestal with an inscription saying, "Congratulations for 25 years of making music from His Royal Highness Prince Charles." It was very nice. It was a nice little pat on the back.
Do you get it when you get young people who sort of want to work with you? Do you find that they're awestruck by you, or that they're sort of, that you're this guitar god that they're very afraid of talking to even, or?
Well, a lot of it can depend on the way I behave, I think. I mean, if I was discourteous, or if I play acted being God, I mean, or whatever, you know, if I use my ego as a weapon, you could make people feel really, you know, shabby or small. But when I'm introduced, or if I meet a young musician that I know in advance thinks I'm good, you know, or as I've inspired him or whatever, I try and put him at ease, and generally it works very well. But I don't, you know, I don't have that. I have had in the past, but I don't have that high opinion of myself. I'm just another musician.
Why is that?
Because that's the way. It's the most healthy way to look at it.
But it can't be easy. I mean, everybody else is sort of putting you on pedestals and admiring you.
Yeah, I guess you've got to just throw that out the window, you know, and just remember who you are, that you're just a hard-working guy who has his ups and downs, you know. I'm not always playing to my best ability, you know, and I live with that.
Is that hard? Do you sort of feel that you always should?
No, it's actually harder for me to have a good opinion of myself. Because, I mean, when you're making a record, for instance, you go in and you do 4 or 5 takes, and you use the one that's best, and that's the one that people hear. They don't hear the bad ones. I do. Because I've made them, and so I'm living with that. I know that, you know, I make 5 times as many mistakes as I want to, and that keeps my feet on the ground.
But when you hear, for instance, like the box set that was put out a year ago, was it?
Yeah, that keeps my feet on the ground.
Does
too.
it?
Yeah.
Do you want to get back and change it?
Sure. I mean, I'd like to have gone back and extracted all the alcohol out of my body and all the other things that.
Can you hear it? Is it
terrible? I can hear myself. I can listen to that album and say, yeah, there's Coke on that one, it's brandy on that, you know. I can hear the state that I'm in.
Really?
Yeah. And it's a little embarrassing.
How long did that period go on for?
Well, I guess that throughout the mid 70s, well, the beginning of the set, like from 73 till about 81, I was really indulging in a lot of different stuff, far beyond my own health could allow, you know, and it had to stop.
It's a long period.
Yeah.
Do you sort of have any physical problems from it?
I had, I got ulcers at one point. I think about 1980, I was hospitalized in America with 3 very bad ulcers. And I mean, I could have been, if I'd carried on, I would have killed myself, for sure. And I think my mental health suffered a great deal too, you know, from overindulgence in booze. You know, you get paranoid and you get just generally very crabby, you know, and a nasty person. You know, you develop a pretty nasty personality if you indulge in any of these things. And people don't want to know you. You lose a lot of friends.
How did you stop?
Well, I guess through the help of friends, you know, through the help of friends, and becoming, you know, aware before it was too late that that I had more important things to do. You know, that I wanted to live and I wanted to be a creative musician. I think if I hadn't been granted some kind of gift as a musician, I probably would have been dead by now.
Really?
Yeah, because it's something to hold on to, you know. You know, even when I was really out of it, I still knew that I was a guitar player, first and foremost.
But now you even manage to sort of not get high then. I mean, you don't play the guitar and you don't take drugs.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Like now, for instance, you're on tour, you don't have your guitar with you.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, I guess I don't have to get high all the time.
So that's what new.